Welcome to Uncle Jimmy's podcast. Sit back, relax, and enjoy the conversation.
What do you both think about fear?
I'm not in this world to live up to your expectations. I'm here to live up to mine.
He who is not courageous enough to take risks will accomplish nothing in life.
Fear is a teacher.
And I don't skip class.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. All right, hold on. Before we get into anything today, I need you to stop. Whatever you're doing, stop driving, pull over, put down the dishes. Because what I'm talking about today and what I'm going to share with you is this kind of conversation that doesn't come around every week on this podcast. This, I always say the most dangerous person in the room isn't the loudest. It's the quiet one who's finally decided to stop holding back. Today, that person is my guest. She served this country in the United States Air Force. She walked into the world of government finance and climbed year after year until she was managing billion-dollar portfolios. A public servant, a leader, a veteran, over 25 years of doing the hard work in the rooms where the real decisions get made. But here's the part nobody expected, including her. Through all of that, she was an introvert. She was a people pleaser. She was the person who said yes when she meant no, who stayed quiet when she had something powerful to say, who worked twice as hard as everyone else, got half the credit, and kept showing up anyway. Sound familiar? She didn't just survive it. She cracked the code. She turned every one of those so-called weaknesses into a leadership superpower. And then she wrote the book on it, literally her book, Everyday Leadership for People-Pleasing Introverts. She's an international bestseller. She holds a PhD in business administration. She's the founder of People-Pleasing Introverts, a movement for every quiet, hardworking, overlooked professional who's finally ready to take their seat at the table. She is a force. She is the real deal, and I am beyond honored to bring her to the Uncle Jimmy's podcast and to introduce her to the family today. Ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Melissa Jenner. Welcome to the show, Doc.
Hello, and thank you.
Thank you so much. Melissa, first, thank you, genuinely, because the people listening to this show right now, a lot of them are carrying something heavy, right? They're the person everybody leans on, the dependable one, the fixer, and they're exhausted, but they don't know how to say it. So I want to dig into something today that I think hits every single one of us differently, depending on where we are in life. And that topic today is going to be boundaries and behaviors, because I think a lot of people hear the word boundary and they think it means building a wall, but that's not it. Is it, Dr. Jenna?
No, not at all. So we're not building walls. What we're doing is we're creating space, and that's different, right? So space, I think what people think is leaders, that you have to be available all the time. But if you're available all the time, then when are you recharging? When are you energizing? When are you gathering your thoughts? And so boundaries is just about creating space. And that's what the thing about what I had to learn in leadership. If my door is open 24/7 and everybody can come in and everybody's going and I'm doing everybody's job and I'm answering all the questions, then how am I leading? I'm just working.
Yeah.
And the job of leadership is to provide the vision, empower the people to do their jobs, give them the resources and tools they need, let them move forward, and I make the hard decisions. I keep the engine going. And so that's what the boundaries are all about. But if we back it up a little bit, if you're sitting in the employee seat, I think everyone thinks, well, in order to get to that leadership, I've got to be that go-to person. Because if you're the go-to person, that means you know it all. Right? Everybody needs you. Everybody relies on you. The problem is that is the problem. You'll never step into leadership if you're the go-to person because you're the helper. The longer you stay in that role, that's all they ever see you as, because they can't imagine life without you. And they will never look at you as leadership, even though you're the one that's sitting there. You're the one that's actually leading the team, right? That's kind of the worst role to ever be in, is a deputy role. Because you're leading the team, you're managing the people, you're doing all the work, you're getting everything across the finish line, but you never get the credit for it. You never get to voice your opinion. No one ever gets to hear what you think. No one knows that it's your idea. And that's where you make the boundary. So then you start speaking up and you start sharing something. And this is where the boundary is, even in speaking, is that I may not know what to say in that moment, but I'm going to say, you know what? I haven't thought about this. Let me get back to you on that. And so this is where I talk about thought bridges. And this is where you start creating these boundaries so you can start speaking up without, forcing yourself to have an opinion. Because a lot of times as introverts, we're still processing. I'm still taking everything in. I'm still trying to understand what you asked me. I'm still trying to take all the analytical piece parts and put that together. So I really don't have a full thought yet.
Yeah.
But I will. And
No,
I also,
exactly.
And the other part to this is the emotional side of boundaries, right? Because we don't want to say something and be wrong. And this can go into an entire discussion about external validation, because really at the end of the day, that is what people pleasing is all about.
Yeah.
It's this fear of judgment. It's this fear of being rejected. And so the other reason why you'll hear people say, oh, my mind goes blank. I'm sitting in the room, they called on me. I finally get my opportunity to speak up and I got nothing to say. Yeah, because you're processing here, you're watching what you're saying here, your mind's trying to calculate over here, and it's all just jumbled.
Yeah.
And that's why, right? I'm like just, and so I have like this illustration where I'm like, your brain's this way and your body's here. And you're just like, yeah, I got nothing.
Yeah, it's like me, Doc, right? When I'm in meetings, when I'm always in meetings and you'll see me, right? I'm over here. So don't mind me when you're looking over and I'm looking down. I'm always writing right now. I'm always taking things in. And when I'm in a meeting, right, I'm the same way. And I'm very quiet, right? But I always have my computer in front of me or a notepad. And I'm always writing and people are always looking at me and they're like, you got nothing to say? And I'm like, I'm still processing it. And after every meeting, right, I'll tell the boss, whether it's the boss or, we'll meet with a team member, I'll get back to you, because if I haven't fully processed it yet, my big thing is trying to shoot from the hip, right? I've learned the hard way that doesn't work. But also taking it back, right? Sitting with it. And it could be a decision, right? Because I'm the executive vice president of my local. It could be a decision I have to make. And, along with my president, we'll sit there and we'll go through it and we'll hash out a plan or hash out, a, final deal to say to the company, we need to do X, Y, and Z. But a lot of times, right, before in the past, I've had people that, they want the answer quickly, right? So I explain to them, if somebody comes to me with a problem and they say, hey, what, my health insurance, this or that, and I'll tell them, hey, give me an hour, let me look it up and get back to you, right? They want the answer right away. But for me, I don't know everything and I don't claim to. So one of my biggest things is making sure, right, they get the right information as a leader, making sure they get the right information, but not just selling them some BS of it's this, it's that, it's this, right? Because as a leader, if you give them BS and they go look it up or they go and say, hey, the executive vice president said this, they're sending false information throughout the whole workplace, right? And me as a leader, I'm supposed to be leading with the right answers, right? And
Mm-hmm.
a lot of people, right? Ego gets in the way because they're the boss, right? And I know all the answers. I claim not to know the answers, even if and Doc, let me ask you this. If I know the answer, I still have to go back and sit down and process it and write it out before I give them the answer. As a leader, right, I've found that that's something, even if I know the answer, I still don't answer them directly right then and there because I want to double check and make sure the information I'm giving them is correct. And I think as leaders, right, we have to give that message. We have to, be powerful. But I love what you said, right? If you're in a meeting and sometimes you don't like to speak up, right? But you have the answer, speak up, right? Don't be afraid. I say it all the time. People need to learn to have their voice, and their voice is great to have. And if you have an opinion, right, bring it up. If you have a issue, bring it up because leaders, right? We need to lead. And I love what you said at the beginning, right? Because I learned my hardest lesson was being available 24/7, 365, right? And that burnt me out, right? To the point of, answering phone calls at 3, 4, 5 in the morning and, about simple things like I had guys and girls calling me about payroll at 3, 4, 5 in the morning. And I would say to them, guys, it's 3 o'clock in the morning. Well, I need this resolved. And I go, when I get into the train yard, I'll look it up and I'll send an email to where I need to, but you don't need to call me at 3. Well, you're always available. And I go, but it's 3 o'clock in the morning. So I've stopped that, right? And it's not, for me, it wasn't people pleasing. It was me with my vision of what leadership actually was, right? My behaviors, right, that led them to think it was okay to call for a payroll issue at 3 o'clock in the morning. And that's the big thing, right? Behaviors. And that's another thing, we're going to talk about because I think behaviors that keep us stuck, right? The patterns we don't even realize we're living in. What it
Right.
takes, what it actually takes to break free from them. Not someday, right? But today, right now, in the moment, right?
Absolutely. So that's where I think that the people pleasing really sort of starts when you talk about behaviors, it starts kind of from your childhood, right? You
Yeah.
start learning these behaviors back then. And there's actually a study that found that children, that all they did was they showed children people in a red shirt and in a black shirt, and they treated the person in the red shirt, meanly. And so that, but they were nice to the person in the black shirt. And then when they brought in people wearing a red t-shirt and a black t-shirt, the children actually favored the person in the black t-shirt just based on the observation. And so you start learning all of this stuff at a young age, and it's ridiculous stuff, right? Like that's a ridiculous example. So now, if those same kids saw you in your red t-shirt, they're going to be like, yeah, no, he's a bad guy.
He's a bad guy, yeah. And I think and what's the age, Doc? Is it between 2 and 7, right? When they're
Yeah. And I want to say it was like 4 and 5 for this
4 and
study.
5. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. And, I've read so many of them, right? And it's one of the things about people pleasing, right? The root of it, is it fair, right? Is it upbringing? Is it survival? For me, I think it's a lot of all of that, right? Fear, upbringing, survival, right? Because in the struggle, right? Someone could be surviving, right? They could be living, in fear, right? And also they could be in an upbringing, right? That's not conducive to, good mental health, right? You may be stuck in a situation where, maybe mom and dad both go to work and there's an hour in between when you're 6 or 7 and mom and dad are like ships passing in the night and they're not home. So you go out, at 7, 8 years old and you're by yourself for an hour and you're supposed to walk right home from the bus stop and get home and wait for dad to come in. And you could go hang with the local kids, right? The little kids in the corner and have fun and, get into some trouble. But I think it's a little bit of everything. What do you think? Fair upbringing, survival? Do you think it's a mix of everything?
It's a mix of everything because even if you have like, the perfect childhood with your parents at home or your dad's working, your mom's at home, full-time mom, it's still this idea that we want to please our parents.
Exactly.
And we learn that every time we do what they say, right, there's a positive response to that. And it's like Pavlov's dog, right? You feed them the treat, they come, like the
Yeah.
bell.
You
So
ring
that
the bell.
whole
Yeah.
thing, right? Even for us, we do that. And I think that's ingrained in us. And then so for me, when I was in the military, when I went into the Air Force and I went into basic training, one of the things I learned was you got to blend in to fit in to get through basic training. And so,
You got to
you know,
lose yourself.
you do. You do. You
Yeah.
just got to mute every part of you that does not fit the role of the airman. And that's how you get through.
Yeah.
And then, so it's all about your experiences and where you want to go and what you got to do. And you blend and you fit and you just keep molding and your brain keeps reinforcing this. And it just becomes this big thing. And then you go into the workforce with all these preconceived notions and these biases that are in your subconscious mind that you don't even know that you have.
Yeah.
And that's where you're operating from.
Yeah. And I think, one of the biggest thing in people pleasing that, people need to realize, right? The goal isn't to stop caring about people, right? It's to stop abandoning yourself in that process, right?
Yes. That's the biggest thing because when you start respecting yourself and you start loving yourself and you start appreciating who you are as a person, then that's where those boundaries and that space starts to make sense,
Yeah.
right? That's when you start taking back time for yourself. That's when you start caring about, you stop focusing on the external validation because the other part of it, right, is external validation activates all those chemicals in your brain just like people pleasing does, right? That's exactly what it is. It's this, okay, I fit in, I made it, I passed basic training, so I'm great, and that's just false. But when
Yeah.
you know who you are then you're not worried about the external validation. The validation is internal validation. It comes from, okay, I made the time for myself. I made the time to do what I need to do. I made time to rest, to relax, to recharge, to train myself, to keep learning and growing, to become the better version of me, to figure out to be the best part of me, to be the best person for my team, because that's also important, right? I believe that when we're in leadership, our job is to be a blessing to each and every person. And so I try to take servant leadership, it's a little bit of a different approach because I feel like servant leadership in the way that it's presented is more of this we serve our employees. And I think that's a misnomer because serving your employees means that you're serving them in good and bad. It's this I want to encourage you to own your work, right? And I'm going to hold you accountable for that. When you're not meeting it, then I'm going to tell you and I'm going to show you, but that doesn't mean I'm going to do it for you. That's, I think, for me, that servant leadership is, but I see you, I hear you, I pay attention to you, I value you, I respect you. And I don't really care if you like me or not. But what I care
Exactly.
about is that we are moving forward together on this mission to accomplish what we need to accomplish And I want to know your goals because if I understand where you're trying to go, then I can help get you the skills, the training, the opportunities to push you along. So I think that's another thing that leaders like to do is they like to hold people in positions. And I'm always think to me, I'm like, well, one, I'm probably not going to be here beyond 5 years. And two, you probably shouldn't be here beyond 3 to 5 years.
Yeah.
So how do I move you along? How do I help you get to that next space? And if you're not thinking about that, and some people aren't, that's okay. I'm good for you staying where you're at if you're happy with that. But I think that's where we help people, right? So if somebody wants to retire, you still need skills in retirement.
Yeah.
So how do I set you up to be prosperous in retirement? And so those are
Yeah.
the kind of things that I think are so important with leadership and how we approach things. And that's why my motto is everybody deserves to be seen, heard, and appreciated.
Yeah. And I think, one big thing, Doc, right, as a leader, I think a lot of people need to realize is that, working as a team, right? Everyone has a voice, everyone has a say. And what I like to do as a leader myself is not put anyone in a position of doing anything that I wouldn't do, right?
Yes.
But also being a leader in the sense of if the voice is needed and there's a problem, right? I'll speak up for the team, right? Because I am the leader. We don't need 100 other people voicing the opinions, right? Because all that's going to do is muddy the waters and get people upset and pissed off. But that's why I'm in the leadership role to speak for you, right? So let's get together. Let's get our brains together. Let's pick each other's brains, right? Have those conversations. Because I think a lot of leaders sometimes they get lost with I'm the leader, do it my way or the highway. And that's never going to work, right? And I'm glad that you don't, use that as part of your leadership. And I'm glad that, the big thing people need to realize too is you're only as strong as your weakest member.
Yes.
And I try to, big thing of being a leader is educating. You can never get enough education. And whether it's from education from the job, off the job, right? But also as a team, and I loved what you said at the beginning because that sort of stuck in my head, about, being accessible 24/7. And I just learned that recently. And that's probably probably just a short term of 7 or 8 months ago that I learned that being available 24/7 doesn't make me a leader. That opens me up for flaws and weaknesses and also opens me up not to get rest and sleep so I can be the best leader for my team. And also, what's the point of having a team if you have people under you and they're going to you at 3, 4, 5, and when they should be going to someone else. And that's the big thing, right? I think we need to talk about is boundaries, right? And what does a boundary actually look like in real life? Could you give me some concrete examples, right, of
Yeah,
boundaries at work, at home, with a family member?
absolutely. So let's just start with work, right? The easiest one is when do you leave,
Yeah.
right? How many times have you said, I'm going to leave at 4 and then you leave at like 10?
Yep. So many times. And if I
Right.
do leave at 4, right, the work that I was going to do, that I'll say, hey, I'll do it tomorrow. I'm doing on the laptop at home till 10, right? So I'm just taking the work home.
Right. And so but you've got to cut it off.
Exactly.
And the thing is if you're going to do it, everyone's going to let you do it. No one's going to say, oh no, don't do that.
Yep.
And it's okay to say, look, I don't have the time to do this. I can't, I have these other priorities. And then that's where you lean on your team. So when you think about leadership, you're trying to create a mini you in your team based on what they are capable to do, right? That's why they're under you. So you're trying to replicate yourself in them and make them the experts in those things. And that's where I'll take something. I'm like, okay, let's train for a couple days because this is not something I have time to do. And now you're going to be the person. And when you get stuck, come back, right? But prove to me that you actually tried and, right, take the time, analyze the work, look things up, use the tools, right? I don't leave you, I don't just drop you in the middle of a minefield and tell you to figure it out. But that's a boundary, right?
Yeah.
Because I've got to prioritize my own workload. If I can't lead myself well, how am I going to lead them well?
The rest of the team. Exactly.
So I've got to make sure that my workload is an 8-hour day. Now, that doesn't mean that every day is going to be an 8 hour. Some days, yeah, I'll stretch to 10, right? Because there's emergencies, there's crises. I get
Deadlines.
deadlines, right? But the team, anything that's routine, right? The team should be picking up the routine stuff.
Exactly.
And
Yeah.
so that's how I set those boundaries down. Like, okay. And then when they fuss, and here's the thing. I think that every leader needs to recognize this. And this is why we talk so much about this external validation. If you're counting on the team to give you your validation on whether you're a good leader or not, you will fail every time.
Every
You
time.
every time, because the team, every time you give them something new, what do? They freak out, right? They
They
hate
freak
you.
out. They bad talk you behind your back, right? Oh, they
Yeah.
give me more work, what that, and it's like, and it's the same way, Doc, right? Because I think people need to realize if you're sitting there and you're the leader and you're waiting for that pat on the back or
You're
that,
never
hey,
going to get it.
congratulate, you're never going to get it, right? But if you have that, internal validation, right? And you put your best foot forward, you've put your team in the best position to do the best job that they can. And you know what? I think as a leader, what a lot of us have to do is hold our team accountable when goals aren't met, when deadlines aren't met, right? It doesn't always fall on the boss to say, guys, we missed this deadline, but we're going to make sure we get the next one. No, the deadline shouldn't have been missed because the boss should have made sure the work was divvied up, the work was done correctly, and that the work was handed off fairly, right, to everybody on the team to do. But also the last line of defense to make sure that deadline is made, it falls on the boss to make sure, hey, the deadline's met. And that's how you lead. That's how you lead. And if you don't lead that way, like you said, you're not going to last long. You're either going to be demoted, fired, asked to, step aside because you can't do the job properly. And, one of the things for me for boundaries, right, that I've learned, and this is just freshly new for me, almost a year in my life of setting boundaries, right, not just in work, but in my personal life. One of the things I had to do was learning that, people pleasing for me, which was a big thing. I had to learn that, starting to put energy into people that put energy into me.
Yeah. And the thing is though, you have to invest in your team, right? So if I wholeheartedly and if I put all my energy into this star performer and I put a little bit of energy into this other person, the team's going to notice.
They're going to notice and feel it.
They're going to notice and they're going to feel it. That's where, you know what? If you need something from me, find the space on my calendar because now the onus is on you. If you can make the time to get on my calendar to sit with me and ask the questions that you want to ask, right? Now it's not me coming to you for anything. So there's no, me choosing you over somebody else, right? The
Yeah.
FaceTime is up to you. You can
Yeah,
have just as
exactly.
much FaceTime as so and so. It's just a matter of you getting on the calendar.
Getting on the calendar. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so
And it
that's
must be, and Doc, let me ask you a question, right? Do you find that, and this is the hottest thing, because I think a lot of leaders do this and it's tough because there are, right, certain people, and I think leaders need to first, right, know with their team, know each individual's strengths and weaknesses, right? What they're capable of, what they're not capable of, right? So when you are divvying up the work, right, you're not giving all the work to, a little bit of work to this one that has no clue what he's doing, and a little bit of this one to, who knows a little bit, because I think a lot of times, a lot of leaders lean on that one special person, and not special because they're the favorite, right? But they're the one they can count on because they know the work's going to get done. They're going to pick up the extra slack, and they never have to be told what to do because they already know what to do. And I think that one person with a leader needs to back off of that and divvy it up to, all the individuals to make sure the job gets done and not put the heavy burden on just that one person because you can count on them because they do the job and they know what they're doing.
the thing is you got to give everybody an opportunity to try and to either succeed or fail, right? So I'll give you, so why wouldn't I give you an opportunity or give that low performer an opportunity first?
Yeah. Yeah.
And then if you really can't get it, then maybe my go-to person might fill in the gap and do a little bit of hands-on training, right? So now I'm setting you up for success, right? I've given you the opportunity. I'm setting you up for success. It's up to you if you take it or you lose it. So that's where I feel like those are the boundaries that I put in place now, right? So the onus is not on me. I have removed that from my repertoire. My job is to lead you. My job is to guide you. My job is to give you the tools. My job is to empower you. My favorite saying is lean forward. If I'm not available and you need to make a decision, then use your best judgment. I will back you 800% of the time, always. If you can explain to me the rationale that you use to make your decision, even if you're wrong, I will still back you, right? In that moment, if you can tell me that you used your rational decision making skills, even if you're wrong, I will still back you.
That's
So
awesome.
move forward, move without me, right? And then We'll come back, we'll do lessons learned, we'll talk about what we could fix. I'm not about there's no gotcha because this is a team.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the big thing. I got your moments, right? That so many leaders I think do. And what I loved what you said there, Doc, was, lean in, right? Because oftentimes there's gonna be times, right, when leadership's not there and someone on the job's gonna have to make that decision and stand, tall on the decision. But to hear you say, right, that you're gonna back them up 800%, hear their rationale behind it, even if they're right or wrong, is powerful because I think as a leader, right, you need to have those people that can lean in, right, and make that decision in the right or wrong, right? But also having the leader at the end of the day stand behind them in that decision because you're only going to empower your team after doing that. And they see that, right? Because you're going to lose the team, right? Or part of the team if you sit there as the leader and blame, hey, Tommy did this wrong and Tommy did that wrong. No, nobody did anything wrong. Look, we weren't here to make the decision. The decision was made. We have to live with the decision that's already been made. Next time, what can we do better? What decision can we make to make it better, right? It's not an I got you because so many times I think leaders are quick to point the finger and put the blame on somebody when we shouldn't, instead of just stepping back and saying, hey, we messed up here. We made a mistake, but let's make sure next time we don't do it. Let's have this conversation as a team. And I love that about you that you said that. That's one of the big things as a leader that I love that you said is that you stand by your team. 800% give me the rationale either. And I love that you said right or wrong because so many leaders will say, yeah, I got your back only if you're right.
No, no, no. And I won't tell my leadership, right? So I have this leadership that's like, well, who did it? Who did, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like,
Yeah,
I did, right?
exactly.
It's me,
Yeah,
right? The person you want to yell at, the person that you're mad at, that person's me. I apologize. I'll fix it, and done deal.
yeah,
If there's something
that's
I
the
can,
power of it.
yeah. And I'm not afraid. And that's where that people pleasing, external validations, where we're talking about boundaries, right? That's where internal self validation comes from. Am I the person that I'm going to be proud of? When
Yeah,
I get done and I go home for the day, did I do everything that I would be proud of for myself? Would that 5-year-old Melissa be proud of the grown?
exactly. And that's so true because oftentimes we struggle, right? And some people do with decisions, right? Whether, hey, is the group going to be okay with this? Knowing that, hey, this decision has to be made, whether the group has feelings that are great about it or not, feeling that. And sometimes, right, people pleasing can get you in trouble where you say, all right, well, let's regroup and see if we can do this different when you already have the answer, right? And you're trying to make everyone happy when the decision has to be made. If in people, I was a people pleaser for 41 years of my life, and you know the big thing was always taking care of everybody else, right? Making sure everybody else was taken care of. And now, right? And I thought it was the most selfish thing when I started doing it, but I learned that self care, self respect, taking care of myself first as a leader, right? If I can take care of everybody else and can't take care of myself, then I'm probably not properly not taking care of my team, right? So what I did was I took a look in the mirror, self-reflected, the man I want to become, forgave myself, forgave others, and then went on the path of clarity of knowing that for me to be the best leader for my team, I have to take care of myself. It's not selfish. It's the right thing to do. And when I take care of myself the right way, I can lead the right way. I can talk the right way. I can be the best leader for the team, right? But it all starts with me and making sure that I'm taken care of physically, mentally, and emotionally first.
Right. And you have to set the example.
It's so true.
So if you're coming exhausted every day, if you're worn out, if you're, operating at 20% because you didn't sleep because you got 18 calls at 3 o'clock in the morning and you went to bed at midnight because you were working on something, right? When you show up at 6 a.m., you're not there.
You're not there, and your team's going to replicate that. How the leader shows up is how they're going to show up as well.
Exactly. And that's what I tell them, right? You're representing the team. And this is the team, right? And so excellence in all we do, service before self, right? The Air Force core values have stuck with me, and integrity in what we do. Respect each other. You don't have to like everybody, but you got to respect each other in the role.
Yeah. And that's a big thing. My dad always taught me. My dad would always say to me, treat the garbage man the same way you would treat the president of the United States of America, right? And one thing my dad used to say to me too was, at work, you're gonna like people, you're gonna dislike people, right? But the one thing you have to do is when you're going into work, if you see somebody you dislike, give them a hi. At the end of the day, give them a goodbye, right? Because that's just respect. And respect's a big thing. Whether you like someone or not, you still have to respect them because put your feelings aside, right? Your personal feelings and beliefs aside, and you're going into work, right? And you may have some people on your team that you don't like and you may dislike, but they're part of the team. And just to make sure everybody's carrying the weight, everybody's carrying the load. But at the end of the day, right, that leaves us to, the behavior loop, right? And why we keep repeating patterns, right?
Right, because it's in our brain. But I do want to share this one example with
Yeah,
you.
go ahead.
So I had this lady, March for May, and you're talking about behaviors, right? And so she's been in this pattern. And she would be what someone would call like the trouble employee, right? The problem employee. And everybody's like, and that's just so and so. Like,
Yeah,
that's
that's
just
how
how
she is.
that's right. Just deal with it. Like, and I'm like, yeah, but she's on my team now. Like, this is not gonna work. Like, we gotta work this out. I'm like, everything about her is like the complete opposite of me. And so we had some heart to hearts. And, this is where I think, we're talking about behaviors, right? So her behaviors are ingrained. And I had to sit down and understand it. Well, first of all, she's been in the workforce for at least, I want to say maybe 4 or 5 decades, right? So what she learned was a whole different generation ago. So
And she's
the way
stuck
her
there.
writing style, like, yeah, and she's there. Like, that's where she is. Her
Yep.
writing style, right? The way that she does things, the way she loves paper. I'm like, we have computers now. Like, have you seen this thing?
Refuses probably.
Right. And, so we had to have a lot of these, but these are the behaviors you're talking about, right? These are the patterns that people get stuck in. And while I'm talking about it from her perspective, and we'll just call her Sunny just for a name, right? I just started saying, okay, I understand this, but can I show you something, right? If I give it to you, if you do it like this, how long does it take you? If you write every single thing down and then you go type it in the computer, right? How long does that take you? Now, what if we take the computer to where you need to go do the work and you type it there? Like, how much time did we just save? And just like, okay. I'm just like, well, and what I've learned is she's only that way because nobody took the time to tell her differently.
So
Nobody,
true.
right? Nobody took the time to change the expectation. Nobody took the time to give her a vision about what she could become. And so when we had her performance review, she said to me, no one's ever treated me this way. You know, I don't think I want to learn and grow. And I wish I had this 20 years ago. And I said, well, even though you're headed towards retirement, you're still learning things that you're going to use outside of retirement. So it's not like you sit here and you do meaningless work because remember, taxpayers are paying your salary and you need to bring them value. And so how can we use your skills to bring you value? And so, honestly, it was a matter of trying things, but it was so easy to write her off, right? When they gave me her, they gave me a file like this big about like
Yeah.
all the things,
Well,
right?
and Doc, right? And you got to think of this, and sorry to cut you off, but you got to think
No,
and think of this, right? And how many people, right, leaders have gone into that office and just wrote her off and let her do whatever she wanted, right? The old school way, and we're okay with it just because she's stuck in her old ways, right? She's not going to change, right? But again, all that she was looking for was the leader to come to her and have that interaction, have that conversation, show her, right? But also the one big thing is showing her respect, right? And treating her the way she deserves to be treated. And again, she was probably stuck in that way for 20 years because she was in the corner probably. Nobody wanted to deal with her. They gave her a caseload. She wrote it out. She took care of it. She went home. And nobody had a conversation with her and they just let her be, right? And that's the tough part. Everybody on the team needs to be involved.
right. Like you said, right? You're only as strong as your weakest link.
Yeah.
So if I'm not putting my energy into her to strengthen her, then what's the point of her being on my team?
Yeah.
Then
Yep.
I'm a failure as a leader.
Yep.
And,
She's
right,
like an anchor just weighing the team down if you leave her there.
yeah.
Yeah.
Right. We've got this attitude, we've got all of these things. But what we found is I found something that motivated her. Something that was interesting is something that she was supposedly supposed to do for all this time that she's the expert in. Right. I just called her out. I just called her out on the truth. And I think that's where leaders have to be, I'm like, okay, well, you say you're the expert, but let me ask you some questions here. And we got to it. And then, and I got the backpedaling, but I didn't want to embarrass her. That is not my intention. My intention is, okay, so can we agree that your way of doing things may not be as efficient as it could be? And will you now look at it my way and give it a try? Right. And let's start small and let's start piece by piece. And you're a part of the process. So let's try this and let's see how this works. And then come back and
Let's
tell
build
me.
off of that.
Yeah. And then that's how we're changing the patterns, right? So same thing for people pleasers, right? Again, get the vision of who you want to be. Because that's all I'm doing with her is I'm getting that vision of where I want her to be, right? I want you to be the subject matter expert. I want you to be the person that everyone goes to about this, right? I want you to be the lead. I want you to be my point person on this. And so get the vision and now let's work towards it. And the same with people pleasing and behaviors, right? The behavior is when we look at extroverts and we see them thinking out loud, we think that they're intelligent because they can talk fast. But that's not the truth. I mean, not that they're not intelligent. I'm sure they are, but that's not that's not our
That's
measuring stick, right? That's not our metric.
Yeah, usually I've found, right, the person that's sitting there talking real fast is, and I don't mean this in a bad way, is most likely the person that knows the least and is just trying to throw
So,
shit at the wall and see what sticks and trying to sell you something you don't need. Because I've seen it. And unfortunately, right, I used to be very similar to that of a fast talker and a quick mover. But that was the nature of, unfortunately, of who I became after some tough leaders that I had before me that I was under that didn't guide me, that didn't give me direction. And I was taken under the wing by a good buddy of mine, Mike Sullivan, and he showed me the way, and I became much more of a leader by watching him do
mhm,
it and him teaching me and taking the time to, when we go to DC, it's the joke. Me and Mike are roommates when we travel together, but I tell people this all the time. Mike is one of the most intelligent guys I've ever met. And he doesn't shut up though, right? He doesn't shut up. He just keeps going. But for me, I love it because he's throwing so much knowledge at me that I just, and it's funny because now when we're at dinner, right? And so say we're in the room and it's 6 o'clock in the morning and we're getting ready. Hops in the shower, I hop in the shower, we're dressed, and he just sits there and talks. Next thing you know, it's an hour. Okay, let's go get a coffee. We got downstairs, he's still talking, he's still going. So what I do with Mike is, I get his valuable time when we're up in the room and I get to learn so much from him. But then we go downstairs and say there's 50 people, and the first person Mike grabs their ear, I just disappear. Because he's going to start talking and tell everybody everything he just told me upstairs, and I already know about it. It's powerful, but he was one of the most intelligent guys I know, and he's still a part of the team. He's great, and he's taught me so much, and I've learned so much from him over the past, 10, 12 years. And he's a true leader in every essence of the word. But he leads very quietly, right? And it's funny because he talks so much, but it's the quiet moments, it's when you see him in action. It's when you see him, we were up in Capitol Hill and Mike was, we'd all have our talking points, and Mike would be like, I'm not going to talk in this meeting. And we go into the meeting, and guess what? Mike takes over the meeting and goes and goes and goes. But that's, to me, right? That's what a leader is, right? He's not going to keep his mouth shut. He's going to say what he wants to when he needs to. And it's great. I've learned from him, and he's been one of the strongest ones. My uncle as well, my uncle Danny, who I've learned a lot from. My little brother Doobie Jerry, I've learned so much from him, and it's funny to say, my little brother, I've learned so much from him, right? Because as an older brother, you sort of take it as he should learn from me. No, look, I'm willing and
mhm.
able to learn from a lot of people, whether they're younger than me, whether they're older than me, wiser than me, right? As a leader, you have to take into everyone, take into everything, right? I'm like a sponge. I take everything in, and I'm able to filter out now the bad. Before I used to take the good and the bad and mix it in between. And so that's one of the big things, right? Is the patterns, right? And that for me was one of the hottest things, was the cycle, right? That keeps people stuck, right? And for me, it was the pattern of, I knew what I should do, right? And I still did not do it, and that pattern got me stuck for so long. And for me, then, the shame came, then the guilt, right? And the fear of being seen as difficult in the workplace. For you, right? What is one of the patterns that you see most people get stuck in?
So we start in imposter syndrome, right? When we take on a new role, we start with the imposter syndrome, and we're working overtime to try to get up to speed because we're afraid that they're going to find us out. that we
Yeah.
don't know it.
Those are
Right.
the
And that's
fast talkers usually. The imposter
right.
syndrome.
It's like, yeah, I got the answer. I know, I'm coming back to you.
Yeah, yeah.
And then, but then what, but when you know that you're not really concerned, are you? It's like, and I have something
Conversation flows.
right? And so that's the start. And then eventually that will smooth itself out and you'll find that you belong, right? You'll find your niche and you'll get to that top of the bell curve. And this is where like life is grand, right? You figured it out, you got it, you know what your day is going to be like, you can handle everything. But then you start falling down the end and that's where the drifting happens. And this is the part where everybody gets stuck. So this is where the people pleasers get stuck. They stay in the drifting because they're afraid to start over again. And that's what they need to go. And this is when frustration starts setting in. And so, what frustration actually does, it's actually a signal. So, if you're starting to get very frustrated at work, right, that resentment's going to start building. So, these are the patterns that you're going to know like it's time for you to get out of this environment because naturally you need to naturally have a purpose, right? And you need to be able to learn and grow. And when you've hit that plateau at that top, in that position, right? And you start getting like frustrated and mad. And we've all seen that. We've all seen like the grumpy old person that's been in the same job for like 30 years, right? Well, they're
Yeah.
grumpy because they never left that pattern. So they just are drifting and all they have is frustration and resentment. And that's not anybody else's fault. But you've got to take that leap of faith again. And you're probably so scarred from the stress of imposter syndrome in the beginning when you first started the job and you got to that point where you're comfortable that you don't want to do it again, but you got
Yeah.
to break that cycle.
Yeah.
And so you got to move past the comfort zone. And again, I know I say fear a lot, but that's really what's holding everybody in that position. And so that's one of the things I see, like, and I'm constantly encouraging, like, just move forward, just keep trying, right? Because when you die, I mean, are you going to have any regrets about the fact that you kept moving forward and that you tried? No.
Exactly. No.
But you will regret the fact that you stayed stuck in some job where you were underappreciated, unseen, and unheard,
Yeah. Yeah. And
or
that's
you're
like me a year
unvalued.
ago, right? One of the biggest things, Doc, was, I felt stuck for so long. And one of the things I came to a conclusion was if I'm not growing and learning every day, then I'm stuck. So as a leader, I try to grow and learn every day, whether it's from, somebody in the workforce, whether it's from a book, right? But growing and learning is a big thing and not being stuck because when you get stuck, right? You're stuck, you're spinning your tires, you're stuck. I often find that if you get stuck and stay stuck, right, those are the ones that are the grumpy old men, the grumpy old women
Mhm.
at work, right? And as a workforce, we allow it because we say, oh, that's just who they are. They're grumpy. Let them be. They'll take care of it, right? When in essence, right, just like you went over to the lady who was stuck in her ways, had the conversation, broke her out of that, right? And had her, working on a computer when she was used to writing everything. And that's what a leader is. A leader is the one that's going to go over and have those sometimes hard conversations, right? That need to be had that may not have been had over the last 20 years, right? Because in my industry alone, it's the old timers who everybody says, oh, they're stuck in their ways, they're stuck in their ways. And for me, it's not that they're stuck in the ways, it's just they've never been led or they've never been talked to the right way or had the conversation the right way. And that's the big thing. And for you have the courage framework, right? Your signature method. Can you
Yes,
walk my listeners through the courage framework?
I sure can. I sure can. So the first thing in the courage framework is, and I actually have my book. I just want to show you my cover
Yeah, that's awesome. And where can people get that?
on Amazon, of course.
On Amazon, yeah.
Where else? Where else?
So for people, right, I'm just going to say this is Courage Framework. This is her guide for building leadership character over compliance. And I want you to break it down, right, as best as you can, step by step, because this is the meat of your work, right? And I
This
would
is it.
love, I hope I'm going to get one of those signed copies in the mail for Uncle Jimmy's podcast,
Of course. Of course.
I always say it. I love when I have authors on and guests because I always end up, a couple of days later, I'll get an email. Hey, what's your address? And I'll get a beautiful book, right? And I always ask, right? And we can talk about this offline, but if you do send a book, I always love to let the person that sends it let them know. Please, in the interior cover, just send me a small message, right, of encouragement that I can use on tough days. And I do
Yeah.
that. I do that for a simple reason is, I'm always reading different books and I finish them, but I always keep my collection of books. And when I open them, when I'm having a tough day, especially the ones since I started doing the podcast, I open it up and I see these beautiful messages from the authors that I've interviewed, and it keeps me going. It's powerful. So I would love that. I would love that if you could do that.
I absolutely will.
Perfect.
And so I will start with this, right? You've got to be the catalyst and the driving force behind the change that you want to see, right?
You
And
have to be the change in the change.
yeah, you've got to do it all. And
Yeah.
that's good, bad, and ugly. But
Yep. And
okay,
you
so the
have to be
first,
fully committed as well.
well, that leads me to my first point. And it's commitment, right? So that's the first thing. And this is what I encourage the leaders to do. Even if you're going into a new job and you're an experienced leader, is write down your commitment. What are you going to commit to your team to do and what are you committing to yourself to do? And just like you've been talking about this whole time boundaries, right? I'm going to commit to, so for me, one of the biggest things that I started doing was going on vacation. And I don't just go on vacation once a year, I go on vacation twice a year. I take 2 weeks off in the spring and the fall, right? And I disconnect. And everybody knows ahead of time, I'm gone. You're figuring it out. Anything you got, get me before I go because I'm not answering, right? I got to recharge. I got to rebuild me. Just like you said, right? That's my time to read books. That's my time to refresh. That's my time to get me learning and growing, right? Because
Yep.
we can have the best intentions, but that does not mean that it's happening. So, you've got to set that commitment. First thing is, what do you want to do for your team? Who do you want to be for your team? And what are you going to commit to do for them? And what are you committing for yourself? And so in every job, every leadership role has a little different aspect to it. And that's where you've got to figure that out for yourself. So that's the first part is commitment. And then you've got to honor that. And then the second part that we're going to walk into is the optimism phase. And this is where, right, glass half full, glass half empty. And so I really want everybody to start thinking about things like not, no doubt, doubt the doubt, right? What if this happened? What if this happened well? What would the outcome be? What are all the positive things that can happen from this? And if there's a positive, aspect to it, then start thinking about it. So when I had my Sunny, right, I didn't think like, oh my gosh, right? It's what can I turn her into? What is the positive outcome that can happen to her? Oh, I can make her a meaningful part of this team, right? And maybe other people tried before me and it didn't work, but that doesn't mean that I'm not them and they're not me.
Yeah.
And so I'm not going to let doubt slip in. And this is where self doubt as leadership happens. This is where the external validation when you're asking people to change. Because believe me, Sunny was not happy about any of the changes I was trying to ask her to do. Right. And nor have any of my employees. Anytime they're changing, anytime they're growing, anytime they're learning, even if it's for their own good and they're trying to step into leadership, right? They're still uncomfortable. And that's the best thing you can do is be patient and listen and let them feel seen and heard. And so every time they give me a negative, I rebut it with a positive. And that's where you've got to fix your mindset is focus on the good. What good can you bring to the table? How can you be good to the people? What are the positives that you can bring into people's lives? And don't worry about the negatives because the positive will always outweigh the negatives.
The negatives. Yeah.
And so that's like my second thing. My next thing is unity. And this to me is the whole key. There's no team without unity. So one of the things I talk about is, a lot of times is for me, the team is like family. You spend 8 hours with me. You probably spend more time with me than you do with your own family. Because you spend so much time with me, then we should treat each other with family, like family. Family, we don't like each other. If you think about it, right? How many times do we disagree? How many times do we don't see things the same way?
Yep.
And so
So
that's
true.
gonna happen at work. Why would this be any different? Right? But the
You're
main
not
thing
going to
is
like everybody, but you're going to get
you're
along and
not.
you're going to treat people with respect.
Right. And so unity is the key thing here. And so one of the things, depending on how large the team is or the dynamic of the team, is that we'll do a team charter. And then we'll talk about, okay, when there's a disagreement, how are we going to handle it? And the first thing is you handle it with the person that you're having the conflict with. And then and if you don't feel comfortable, then let's bring in a team lead, right? But that doesn't mean that you run to me,
Right
right?
away. Yeah.
Your own conflict. And so that's part of our team. And we talk about it, right? It's like, okay, if we disagree about this, who are we going to go to? Okay, who's the expert in this area? We're going to go see that person, right? My job is to empower you to operate without me all the time, every time, because one day I want you to step into my role because I'm definitely moving on.
Yeah.
And it can be any one of you. Unity is big for me. You don't have to like each other, but you got to get along and you got to figure out how to get the mission done and put your differences aside. And so building a team charter, letting them be involved in that process, that's huge. And then once you've got the team, right, because it's reflection. And so reflection, this is more for the leader, but I also do it with the team from a lessons learned perspective. So from the leadership role, if you think of, okay, a lot of times when we're frustrated, you ever have that thought that like just constantly repeats itself like over and over and over again, right? And what it is that you didn't say something that you should have said in that moment, right? And
So true.
you just can't get rid of it.
Yeah,
And so
it's sort of like as a leader, it just eats away at you almost.
it does, right?
I should have said it, and then you're like, well, tomorrow I'll bring it up, and then you're like, well, the time passed and it already passed, so I can't bring it back, and it could bother you for a week, and then you finally come to the conclusion like, all right, it's over, it's done, it wasn't said. Next time, how can we make sure I say what I have to say?
Yeah. And so one of the things in reflection is, first of all, what did I do good? What part of the thing that and you notice I'm always focusing on good and positivity because the thing is negativity is all around us
So
and
true everywhere.
it's everywhere. So if you're, I want to be that sunshine. I want to be that light. I want to be that good. I want to change. When I show up in the room, I better change my environment, right? I'm not showing up dead. I'm not, no. So reflection for me is, okay, what did I do good? And now take a moment, close your eyes. What is future me going to say next time? When this happens, what does future me want to say? And if it's something that, for an employee that I need to talk to, then I want to say, why did future me want to say this? What is it that I'm trying to correct, right? Because there's something that's gnawing at me, that's annoying me. And it's either a me problem or it's a them problem, but not
Yeah.
all the time is it a them problem, right? So it's really reflecting on what that issue is. Because just because I didn't correct the behavior in the moment doesn't mean that I can't come back and have a civil conversation about it later.
Well, and the key word right there, civil conversation, right?
Yes.
And don't
And
mind me, right? Don't mind me. As I said, I've showed you, I'm sitting here, I'm writing. So that's why you see my head down, and I say this, people oftentimes always ask me, they're like, what are you always looking at? I'm like, I'm always writing. What are you talking about? Because I'm always learning, right? And people are like, well, why don't you just learn and pay attention? I said, I am paying attention, but
but that's how
it's
we pay attention, right? We process by
exactly
reading.
exactly. So true.
Yeah.
So true.
And that's
Sorry about
supplement.
that.
No.
In like you said, civil. And I think people need to get that through their head that, in everything in work, especially at work, coming from the leader, if you're sitting there and you're coming at them, right, yelling at them and screaming at them, right, it's not going to work. It's never going to work. If you come to them and just say, hey, team, we got to have a brief, let's meet up in 5 minutes, and you sit there and you tell them, hey, we made a mistake today, but as the leader, I take the blame, right? But next time we're going to make sure we hit all the goals and we hit the deadline, and well, I'm going to make sure that I'm on top of it, and we can do better, right? We can be better, but we're going to make sure we get it next time, right? Instead of saying, you guys suck, you guys messed up, we messed up, if that negativity catches on, and for me, right, I find with the workforce, once you have one person that's negative, they talk to the next person, that person becomes negative, right? And it starts spreading. And what I love about
Gosh.
your style is the whole thing of positivity, right? Positivity to me breeds positivity, and that's how it has to be. If you're negative and you have a negative workforce, it's only going to spread throughout the whole workforce, because if positivity isn't there, negativity is always going to be around. Like you said, look, here's negativity right here, a phone, right? A
Mhm.
computer that we're on, social media, right? There's always something, right? Somebody, and I say this, Doc, right? I've never met a society that we're in. Someone can go on, have a great day, right? Then go on Facebook or social media and have a terrible day because they saw a photo of, someone else on vacation. And it's like, no, that could be you too. Work hard, put a couple dollars away a week. Don't be mad. And I think negativity for people, right, they only think negatively, when it comes to, personal life. But to me, if you're a negative person, that is throughout your whole life, whether it's in your personal setting, right, at home, or your work setting, right? You all of a sudden are not a negative person at home and come into work and you're the most brightest, joyful person spreading positivity. No, it don't happen. So for people that tell you like, oh, I'm just miserable today because the job did it to me. No, you're just a
Huh.
miserable person in life. You must hear it all the time. The job did it to me. The job didn't do it to you. You're just miserable. Brighten up, right?
You choose. It's a choice. It's a choice,
It's exactly, exactly.
right? You choose how you want to show up in your environment.
Yeah. Reflections,
Right.
reflections for leadership.
What this actually leads into adaptability, right? And so we still want to stay positive, but we want to be adaptable and we want to admit our mistakes. So I don't always get it right. Like we were talking about earlier, we talked about the strengths and the weaknesses. And sometimes as leaders, my job is to see their potential a year from now, their potential 6 months from now, their potential 5 years from now, right? And help them become that person. But sometimes I could push them into something that they're not ready for. And I can give them an assignment that I know they can do, but my belief alone isn't enough. Or I don't have the time to nurture them and mentor them the way that they need to grow into that assignment. And so it's being adaptable and being, you know what? I apologize here. I made a mistake and own up to it, right? It's not them, it's both of us, right? Because I'm assigning the work.
Yeah. Own it.
Yeah. And so I think that's being adaptable and being able to say, okay, you know what? Let's reframe this. Let's see how we can fix this. Let me reassign this to somebody else. But it's being willing to say, okay, I made a mistake or I don't know the answer. And it's okay that I don't know the answer. I used to think that leadership, you had to know everything because you're at the top. And if you're at the top,
Yeah.
then you know everything.
Yeah.
I don't.
Yeah.
And I will honestly admit it. And I tell them, I said, I don't know everything. That's why you're here.
Yeah.
That's the
I
bottom
say it
line.
right. To me, a truly good leader doesn't know everything. To
Mm-mm.
me, if someone tells you, well, I'm a leader and I know every little thing and every single thing, to me, I would say that's a person that's, imposter syndrome, no doubt about it. Because there's not one single person on this planet that knows everything. There's
No,
not, and, especially when it comes to, politics, leadership in general, that's one big thing where, public speaking and all that comes into play, right? And I think for leaders, like you said, I had a guy on, Chip Schultz, right? He has a phrase, Semper Gumby, right? And it was always flexible, and always flexible is, somewhat to adaptability, right? And leaders have to adapt. If you can't adapt and think quick on your feet and not, assign blame, being a leader might not be for you, you know? And
right.
also taking the responsibility when the team fails, it all starts with the person at the top.
Yes. And it's understanding what you need to know. And that is a difference, right? So I need to think, and this is, kind of one of the things I find that even leaders above me is they want to know all the nitnoid details, right? And I don't need to know that. I need to know the big chunky pieces. So when we're talking and I need to make decisions, I know enough to make a decision. I know enough to say, you know what? I need to check with my expert on that and I'll get right back to you, right? And I'm comfortable saying that. I need a moment to think about it and I'll get right back to you and I will follow up or I'll have somebody reach out to you. And I think it's being comfortable in yourself to say that and being adaptable to that situation. And so, like you said, you have to be able to think on your feet and move, but I don't need to know every nitnoid detail. And I think that when leaders start getting in the business of their employees, now it's a difference. I will say this, it's a difference of, I do believe this, if I let you go on vacation, if you go on vacation, right? It's my job to make sure your work still moves forward, whether I'm doing it or we have a colleague doing it, right? And then I'm going to ask you to give me something so I know what to do and know the details. But in my day to day world, I don't care about the details because that's your job,
Exactly. Yeah.
right? And I'm trusting you to be amazing at your job. And that's it. That's all there is to it. And I want you to get the credit for what you do. And that's adaptability to me, right? I can pivot because I understand. And when people are talking about impact, I understand from a high level perspective, but I don't need to know that A plus B equals C, and that leads to Z.
Yeah.
And I think, and so many times if people want control, and this is a huge part, there's no control in leadership.
So
That
true.
is actually the secret. You have to let go of the control because if you're trying to control everybody and everything, you will always be frustrated because you're working with a whole bunch of imperfect people.
Yeah. And that's the big thing, can't control everyone because I think a lot of leaders think that it's about control, right?
Mm-mm.
I'm the leader, so it's, controlling this one, controlling that one. the thing is when you're working in certain environments, right? Actually, all environments, you're always, if you have a team, just say of 10, if you have a team of 20, 30, 40, 50, you're never going to have this, if you have a team of 50, you have 50 different individuals. There's not one single person that's the same, right? So as the leader too, right? You have to learn to mesh. You have to learn to, be flexible, be adaptable, like you said, but also, right, knowing this guy's great at this girl's great at this, knowing your team, because I think a lot of leaders just lean on their team and here you go, here's the work, divvy it up. So and so is going to do this, but to be a true leader, you have to know your team. You have to know, their strengths, their weaknesses. And again, I still go back to the story of you taking that lady, right? After 20 plus years of just sitting in the corner doing it her way and showing her the right way to do it. That's true leadership, right? And again, I love that because as a leader myself, that's one of the hottest things of the old timers that I work with, trying to get them, stuck out of them ways. But for me, it's all about having that initial conversation with them. So I can't wait to get back out to the train yards and have these conversations with the guys and girls because you have pushed me, right, as a leader myself and you as a leader to go and have those tough conversations that need to have. And I appreciate that.
Yeah. And and the thing is we're trying to help them, right?
Yeah.
And the one thing I separate for her was what is helpful work versus what is meaningful work. And
Yeah.
a lot of times I think that generation gets stuck in helpful work. And I tell her all the time, like, I appreciate that, but that's not the priority. The
Yeah.
priority is meaningful work, right? You are so much more than that. And this is where I need you.
Exactly.
Like
Yeah.
this
And,
is
and,
yeah,
right. And I think they're just so stuck, the old time I got 8 hours of work and I got to do this. And they're so stuck of regimented of,
yes, yes.
you know, and they're not adaptable because they're not taught or, nobody showed them how to be adaptable. Right. And I appreciate Doc for the time because, you guys may not know it's 10:22 as we shoot this. I started my day podcasting at 4:30. Doc came on at 8. I had to take a little break to get a drink. And I want to just extend my heartfelt thanks to you, Doc, for staying here right through the course because I had to take a little break. And then, we got offline and we were talking and we probably should have recorded it, but we didn't. We had a lot going on, great conversation behind the scenes. And as I say it, right, I'm not one of those podcasters that you always hear like, you got to pay $5.99 behind the scenes, right? I don't have any behind the scenes. I don't do that. I think for me, behind the scenes, when I'm talking to somebody, it's very personable and it's very personable that, there's a lot of things I can share online, but there's also a lot of things that I keep private, and my guests keep private that we have conversations about. And I think that's the power of podcasting, right? Knowing when to hit the record button and knowing when not to. And I think everybody, in the podcast world needs to take a step back and stop with the gotcha clips and right. Just one
Yeah.
word, one piece of advice for the podcasting world. Be yourself, right? Be your authentic self. I'm not in this to make any money. I'm in this to spread the word, of Doc here, and all my guests and letting people know that we're all in this together, right? It's all about unity and we're all part of this world. We're all part, there's 8 billion of us. And we all need to stop looking at each other as Republicans, Democrats, or Americans, or Asian, Chinese, or Japanese, or Russian, right? It's time for the world to come together and just be like, hey, we're all in this together. No more wars, right? No more fighting, and I think we need to do that. I hope someday, right, peace will be achieved throughout the world. I don't know if it will ever happen. I mean, I can be I can be one of those hippies that thinks peace for everybody, but I just think it's being part of a human, human nature.
Absolutely. And that leads me to gratitude.
There we go. Right? Couldn't even have said, and we didn't even set that up. We didn't even set that up offline. Nothing. And I didn't even know gratitude was coming. That's the best part. That's the best part of podcasting right there. She hits me with
You couldn't
gratitude.
have known. You couldn't have known.
That's awesome.
Right. But that's exactly everything that you're talking about. It's really that attitude of gratitude. And it's going beyond that and just really taking the step back of what do I have that's positive in my life today? What am I thankful for? What am I grateful for? It's so easy to get up and say, oh, I got this ache in my back, or I
Yep.
didn't sleep good last night, or whatever. How about the fact that we're breathing? How about that it's a new day and that we have the chance to make a positive impact on somebody's life today. And it doesn't take much. I think I recently posted something that the impact of a smile, because you just smile at somebody, you naturally make this connection, right? Your eyes catch, and then what do you say? You say hello. But that little smile can change, open doors for you, open doors for that person. It can help somebody feel connected, right? It can even stop somebody that's thinking about taking their life. It gives them an
Yeah.
opportunity to open up a conversation. So I think that just really, it's something so simple. It's free.
Yeah.
There's a gentleman that I see, on my commute all the time, and he's always grumpy and he's always trying to like sell these papers and whatnot. And every time I walk by, I'll smile and say, "Hey, how's your day going?" Something like that. And all of a sudden you'll see that I get the smile back, for a split moment. He'll say hi, he'll give me a little wave, and then when I'm out of sight, he'll go back to being grumpy. But for that moment, right? And
Yeah.
that's the thing.
You
It's
brought that little spark of joy, right? To him. It could
yeah.
be just for a second, when I say it, right? Thursdays is my day. I usually like when I go through the coffee line, I say to, I'm paying for the car behind me, right? And I pay it forward. But it's the simple things, right? Of holding the door for somebody, right? And as they go through, hey, hope you have a great day, right? Or hey, how you doing today? And some people may give you a look, and
That's
it's,
okay.
here in Boston, we have a very tough group of people, right? And it's funny. And I'm going to swear here, Doc. So I hope you're okay with it. You can hold the door for someone, and someone will turn around and say, "Hey, fuck you," right? And this is the Boston way of doing things, right? That's a sign of, hey, we like you. Fuck you is more like, oh, thanks, pal. Fuck you too, right? It's one of those things. It's a Boston thing. And when someone says that, because you'll get it once in a while, when they say fuck you turn around, you say fuck you to them, right? You'll see the biggest smile on their face, right? And you'll get a smile and a kick out of it, because that guy is trying to ruin your day. And then you hit him back with that, and he just smiles knowing that, hey, everything's okay, right? It's just the Boston way, right? You hold the door, people are grumpy. Sometimes they'll even yell at you when you buy them a coffee, like, what the F are you doing? What are you doing? I don't need a coffee. I have my own money, right? And then you're just like, hey, I'm just trying to pay it forward, right? But Boston's a very, very, very strange place, right? Where we have different ways of, showing gratitude. But I love Boston. I wouldn't have wanted to be raised anywhere else. And gratitude is a big thing, right? It's a big thing.
Yeah,
And
it's more than thank you, right? Or
yeah,
even the FUs, right? It's mindset of
yeah,
I'm gonna make a difference today. I'm grateful for everything that's in my life today. I'm grateful for my position. I'm grateful for the opportunity that I have to lead the team, right? And I'm grateful that I'm entrusted to lead these people, because I don't take it for granted that I was appointed as their supervisors, their leaders, their manager in that moment. So many times I'll have people come onto my team for a moment, and you know what? They're going through something and they're with me for a season, and then they're going to go somewhere else. But to help them get through, a bad situation in their life, maybe somebody passed, maybe they're going through a divorce, maybe their dog died, whatever it is, right? For that moment, I am their leader because it's to help them through that.
yeah,
And so I don't take that for granted in my role. And while I recognize that being a leader is the most thankless job, right? The gratitude from it is that years later, I will see these people grow, right? And whether I see it or
exactly.
not, they're going to grow. They're going to progress. I'm going to help them get somewhere further than they would have gotten if they stayed stuck where they are.
Yeah. And the big thing is like you said, I think a lot of people, right, when the alarm goes off first thing in the morning, you're either smashing it off the floor, throwing it off the wall, right, because you're so mad. But, from the listeners, right, try this for once. When the alarm goes off, let the feet hit the ground, right, take a minute and just think how lucky you are to have woken up. You have a blank slate, right, in front of you, a new day, right? Yesterday may have been tough. You may have had some bad moments, but you got a new day today. You got a blank slate. Start fresh, right? So take your shower, brush your teeth, take your vitamins, your meds if you have to, and go out, right? And hold that door. Hold out. When you're going to get a coffee and you see somebody, hey, give them a little smile, but direct eye contact, right? Direct eye contact. Give them a smile. Give them a, hey, how you doing today? But just be grateful, right? Because there's only so much time we have on this earth, right? And I think we need to be more, show more gratitude towards each other, but also, right, having gratitude for yourself, right? For yourself and being proud of yourself and how far you've come, right? And how far you're still going to go. You're going to grow still. You're going to learn still. And I say it, when my mental health gets a bit out of whack, It's when I get stuck. When I get stuck, right, my depression and anxiety kicks in because I don't know how to get out of this situation. But now I've learned to get out of the situation, right, is I gotta have gratitude. I gotta be happy, and I just gotta stay positive because positivity breeds positivity, you know.
Absolutely.
And it's a simple thing of, just a simple thing of not being mad that the alarm went off and woke you up, being excited for another day, and it could be you're looking towards a vacation, right? And it's coming up, but just be happy that, you know what, you made enough money to put a couple extra dollars down to have a vacation, right? I say it, Doc, right? A lot of time what gets lost in America, and I'm just speaking for Americans, right, is how many of us get to come into a house, flick on a light switch, and we have lights, right? Right now
Oh,
I'm
yeah.
sitting here, I got the air conditioner going, right? And it's freezing cold in here, and I'm able to podcast right here, right, with a nice computer, and I got Alexa over there, and I could show you my setup. I got a Mac computer here, I got a TV screen here, I got everything set up. And it's small things, right?
Running
But
water.
running water, exactly. Food on the table.
Yeah.
Yeah, small things that we all take for granted, right? When I went to the Dominican Republic years ago, Doc, I had this major anxiety attack that led to this full-blown panic attack. And I wanted to leave, and I couldn't comprehend what I was seeing as an American. I seen little kids naked, no running water, mud floors, just poverty, right?
Mhm.
Poverty at a scale I've never seen before. And, every day I made it an example, not an example. Every day I made sure that there was these 3 guys that worked at the resort that I always gave them $20 every day. And I was there for 10 days. And you would have thought $20, I was giving them $1 million.
Yeah,
They
yeah.
were so grateful, so happy, right? But to see the Dominican, it was sad because I don't know if you've ever been to the Dominican,
Mhm.
Bavaro Beach. You can go on Bavaro Beach, and that's in Punta Cana.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, and
Okay.
you look to the left and you can see resorts as far as your eye can see, and you look to the right, and you can see resorts as far as you can see. You could go on the beach and you can go everywhere, but you can't step foot in front of the resort because it's in the worst part of town, right? And I always say it. What frustrated me was if all those big, huge hotel chains and resorts took 1% of their annual profits, 1%, and invested back into the community, how much more money they could make over the years by building up the community around them. Because you're building up a community, you're making it a spot where people are going to be able to work. You're giving back to the community where they can be able to work, provide for their family, keep up a nice little neighborhood, and people can go outside the resort and enjoy it. But to see the pure scale of greed right up and down Bavaro Beach is why I would never go back to the Dominican, because, those resorts are so self-centered that they just want to make all that money. They have the workers, they have the beautiful land, they have the beach, but they don't invest back into their community. So I can't be involved. I've never gone back, and nor will I go back to the Dominican Republic because of that.
But you took the opportunity to make a difference in a capacity that you can, right? Whatever you could do at the moment. And I think that's right. It's an opportunity that you took to make a positive difference. And you should be grateful for that moment, even though we saw the bad, right? But we saw the truth. And
Yeah.
truth is ugly sometimes.
Yeah. I've never seen anything like it in my life. And it was hot terrifying. But I think and it also gave me, Doc, the reality of how grateful I was to be from America. And I was like, whoa, like, even like parts of Aruba, I went to Aruba, and parts of Aruba are tough to see. I had always thought Aruba was like this built up island and they had all this money and it was great. And there were some parts I went to that were pretty scary. And I'm like, this is not what I thought it was. And it's tough because I think, right now in the world, and we're going to get back to the framework, right? But I think right now in the world, the hottest part becomes when you look at the top 1% who own 99% of the money, right? There's a problem there, where I think we need to figure out, right? And I'm not saying the guys at the top need to take their money and spread it out to the rest of us. No, but I think there's no way that, Elon Musk should have close to $500 billion and Bezos having 360 something billion and the Walton family have billions, right? One of those persons, families, could invest $1 billion and end hunger, right? Why don't they do that? I just don't understand the human side of the brain of people that are, so self-centered. Like, think of it, Doc. Elon Musk has a plan when he wants to go to Mars. What the hell are we going to do at Mars? We're gonna spend billions of dollars to get to Mars to what? You can't live there. You're never going to get there. So stop it. It's a pipe dream, right? Take those billions that you send rockets into space and feed the homeless,
Right.
clothe the naked, right? And take care of nations that need to be taken care of and make it an equal footing for all of us, right? Because we're all humans at the end of the day. We all want to see each other do well, you know?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And, and teach them how to fish, right? So it's not just I'm going to give you a meal, right? I'm going to teach you how to grow the meal. I'm going to, right? And then you can sell that produce, and then you can turn it into something else, right? Just like you said in Dominican Republic and Aruba, right? Same thing, same concept is that, right, those people, they have natural resources,
Yeah.
but it's a matter of, right, they are not in control or have access to their own natural resources to utilize that for profitability, right? For consumerism. And so helping them get access to those resources, right? That they can do their own thing and
Yeah.
they can take care of themselves. And there's nothing wrong, just like I say, you need to be seen, heard, and appreciated at work. There's nothing wrong for helping people have those basic necessities to live: a roof over their head, running water, right? Sewage, like a sewage
Yeah.
system, not a hole in the ground. Uh,
Exactly.
all
Yeah.
healthcare,
Yeah.
food.
Humanity at its finest, right?
Yeah.
And I think we need
Basics.
to, yeah, basics, and again, I think as Americans, we take a lot of that for granted,
We do. We do. We have an amazing country. We live in an amazing world.
Such a
If
melting pot, where
we
we
are.
live, we are. And I say it, we're the greatest, America is the greatest experiment ever in countries, and I think it was Reagan, right? Who might have been Ronald. I think it was Ronald Reagan. And it was his last speech to the American public. And he's going on and on and on. And some guy wrote him a letter, and it was about America. And he said, look, you can move to France, but you can't become a Frenchman. You can move to Spain, but you can't become a Spaniard. And he said, but anybody can move to America, and you can become an American. And it was so true, right? And he was like, you
Yeah.
can't move to Russia and and it was so true. And I think we need to get back to that, right? As a country, as welcoming in, right? Those that need shelter, right? Those that need to be loved and appreciated, right? Because there's a lot of people, there's a lot of conflict going on in the world. And I think we need to bring back, loving, caring for all, for one another, for your neighbor, for your community, right? For your state, for your country, but also for mankind, you know?
And I think you had another guest who talked about, right, the end result of all religions is love,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. So true.
And,
Yeah.
that's really what it is about here. It just showing a little love, a little compassion, a little humanity, and just a little bit goes a long way.
Yeah. And that brings me back right to gratitude, because gratitude is gratitude is the biggest thing, and practicing that, right? Practicing that every day. And also, look, and I mean this in the most honest way, also show gratitude in the hard times,
Hmm.
because that's also similar to like religion, right? When people pray, people only pray when shit hits the fan. If you're religious, right? Pray all the time. Pray when it's going great. Pray when it's going bad. Pray when you need guidance. Pray when everything's, falling apart. Pray all the time. And it's similar to having gratitude.
Yeah. So, two things on gratitude, right? So, a daily habit that we have is, this is the day the Lord has made, and I will rejoice and be glad in it. And that is the first thing that I say when I wake up every morning, right? And I mean that because I don't know what the day has, but I know that I'm on this side, I'm breathing, I'm alive, and I have an opportunity to make a difference.
Yeah.
And then when it comes to gratitude for the team, right? That's also important because that's the appreciation piece that people need to thrive. And thank yous are empty. Thank yous, when you say thank you all the time, it is an empty thing, right? Unless they really feel seen, they feel heard, they feel appreciated. Even I've delivered bad news, and I'll get like, you know what? Thank you. No one's ever told me that before.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, like what is the fastest way out of this room after I deliver this news? you know, but it's a part of gratitude is giving to your team what they need and thanking them, but in a way that they feel appreciated. I
Yeah.
had somebody ask me, for my birthday, can you make me this? And I said, sure. And I baked it and I brought it in. It was my first time making it. But you know what? that made him feel so special in that moment.
Yeah.
Right. He felt appreciated. And so it's small things. I'm not saying that all leaders have to bake for their employees, but it does help if you can manage it.
If you can manage it, yeah. But it's the small things, like you said, right? And it's the small things that go a long way.
It does. It does. And being thoughtful about when you're going to deliver those messages. So if you wait 6 months to thank them for something that they did when you're doing a performance appraisal, that doesn't mean as much as it means in the moment when you're praising them for the amazing thing that they did.
Exactly.
And even if somebody makes a wrong decision or a poor decision, right? I'm still grateful for the fact that they showed up and they tried to make a decision, right? I'm grateful that and that leads me to my next one, is that they were empowered and they felt empowered that they could do that. And so I always thank them, and then we talk about what's next, right? And so the next thing is empowerment. And so when you're as a leader, this is the part where we talked about, you have to give up control. So most leaders, right, we say, well, I can manage anything that's within my control. Well, I can manage, but it's not within my control. It's in my team's control, right? Because I want them to own it. And that's where you got to sit down. So like, your payroll person, there's somebody that manages payroll under you. You don't have to get that call.
Exactly. Well, Doc, too, I think empowerment, right? People sometimes, leaders, right? I think are afraid to empower their team because they're afraid that someone on that team is going to take their job. I think that happens a lot of times with leaders.
I agree with you, right? And that's definitely a different discussion for a different day.
No doubt
But
about it.
But I will say this. To me, if you are secure in who you are and you believe that you're there to make a difference in the world, you're always going to move on. So if you're trying to control the narrative, if you're trying to control that position because you're trying to stay in it forever, then you got to ask yourself why,
Yeah,
right? Because if you are as wonderful as you say you are, then you should be moving on consistently.
exactly. Moving on up.
You want, if like to me, I know I did a good job when the team could manage everything without me. If a crisis
Yeah.
happened, they should be able to handle it and not need me.
Yeah. And usually, right, you'll come back from vacation 2 weeks and you'll be, either if you have a great team, you'll have very few things to do except pick up where you left off, or you're coming back to a mess
Right. Yeah.
if your team can't handle it while you're away.
And what I love about my team is that like they all want to come see me, but they also want to tell me what they did. Right. They're like,
Yeah.
no, you're gone. I've done this, this, and this. You're right. Like,
Yeah.
and for the one that I was talking about, that we're calling Sunny, right? One of the things that I knew, like she changed, like, and she decided to take ownership is when I was going on vacation. See, this is why boundaries are important, right? You got to go away. You got to give people an opportunity to live without you. And before I was going, she said, can we go over what I'm going to work on while you're gone? And she put the time on the calendar and we sat down.
That's awesome.
Like, so she's invested, right?
Yeah.
She could have just let me go but
Yeah,
no.
but here's the thing, right, Doc? You invested the time in her. So here she is now investing the time back into the team because you know what? You made her feel like part of the team, that she's there, she's on the team, and she's appreciated. Because a lot of leaders get lost in that. A lot of leaders just take it for granted that they're at the top, some of them.
Yeah.
I've seen it. And I find more often those at the top, right, that haven't, risen through the ranks and came from the ranks, and they take it for granted, right? And they take their team for granted, and they take everything that the team does, and they want, the pat on the back and the appreciation for it. And look, I say it all the time. This is a team effort. Being in the union is a team effort, but also being in the union, it's a contact sport, right? There's no sidelines, no sitting on the sidelines. You're part of the team. We got to get everybody invested, everybody involved.
That is the key. And that's the empowerment piece. And that's why you cannot be in control. I can control the things that I understand and I know about, right? I can control that narrative as much as I can, but my team's in charge, right? But that's where I set the clear expectations. So, and I think that's where a lot of leaders, and I'm very open about when things aren't going right and we have that conversation. My question is always, what can I do to make this better for you? What can I do to make this clearer for you? How can I help? How can we get back on the same page together? So it's something that I'm not connecting, I'm not communicating. How can we fix me to help you? And I get really good feedback. I mean, like, because and there's no reprisal, right? I want to know because I want to help. And so one person told me, he goes, well, you know, he's like, it's like you send me to Starbucks and you tell me to go bring you coffee, but then bring it back. And then you're like, but I want whipped cream. Oh, wait, go back and get sprinkles, right? And, and I was just like, oh, I'm like, this is really good feedback, And I said, well, I said, so what can I do better? And I'm like, so if I gave you the whole order up front, like, would that help you? And, you know, and we started talking about like the timeline. And so then I started filling him in, on how things are coming, right? So leadership is coming at me 20 different ways. So I might have told you like at 7 a.m., go get the coffee. But by the time we got to like 7:40, I've had 30 other people give me input.
Yeah, exactly.
So now, so the coffee is changing, and so, I started really thinking about it and we started working together. We started trying to figure it out. And then I realized, you know what? I think if I put him on a slower paced team, he'll thrive.
Yeah.
And so we negotiated that move and he came back to me. So he's happy to move. And he came back to me. He said, you know what? I learned a lot. He said that I really learned a lot. He's like, I'm glad you moved me. And I said, it's, you know, you were taking all the changes personal and I can't fix that part. But I understand the fact, the frustration of things are changing, things are moving, but we can't control external factors. All we can do is mitigate them and pivot, right? That's the adaptability piece.
Yeah.
And so, but if you have the data is the data, right? It's just a matter of manipulating it differently.
Yeah.
And every time I asked for a change, he was like, but I just finished this. Well, that's not what we want now.
Now, Doc, do you think that, when it comes to leadership in a leader, do you think what's one of the hardest things you've had to do, being a leader? One of the biggest things you had to learn as a leader?
So I started like everybody else. And I'll be honest, I had one person that told me, I mean, he frustrated me like to the end. Everything you can think about, this person frustrated me. So I started leading early in my career. Everyone is typically always older than me, um, by at least, I would say like at least 10 years, if not like twice my age. So this particular person, right, was in the military, obviously was a leader themselves, family, has all this stuff, right? Very established person. And so they had strong personality, extrovert, in fact, and didn't want to take guidance from a female. And so we literally one day I lost my temper. It's like I don't know what to do. I don't know how to communicate with you. I don't know how to help you. I don't know how to I'm like, we're on the same team. I'm just trying to sign your paycheck and say that you're doing your work, but I need you to do it a certain way. And so I lost my temper and he said to me, he said, do you think that I come to work to do a bad job every day? And I could see the tears getting ready to like stream down his face.
Come down.
And I thought, whoa, like, no, but you mess everything up. Like that has to, right? And so that is probably one of the most pivotal points in my leadership. And that's when I really started looking at this framework because I've been studying it for a long time, right? But the thing is I wasn't connecting with him, right? I just assumed that I understood that he dismissed me based on his behaviors. But I never actually investigated it. And so that's why I say, like, if you stay quiet in leadership, right, then you're automatically agreeing to it. Whatever they think, whatever they're doing, you're agreeing. And that's where you have to have the hard conversations. Otherwise, you're going to end up in a room when you're cussing each other out for no reason. And, the guy's getting ready to cry. And what are you going to do?
Yeah. And it's having those tough conversations that need to be had, and for me, Doc, one of my biggest things I had to learn was as a leader, can't take everything personal.
Well, yeah, you can't. You can't.
Because in the beginning, right, you do. You take everything
do.
personal. You do. And you learn to, eventually that it's not personal, right? It's the job. But you have to be able to, differentiate that it's just work. It's not personal. It's not who I am. They're just frustrated because at the end of the day, I'm holding their feet to the fire because I'm the leader. I'm the boss, right? I have a job I have to do. But my job is also to lead and manage this group of people. And we have to get the job done, So if deadlines aren't being met, say the paperwork's supposed to be due the day, yesterday and you hand it in 3 days late. Hey, this is late. Like, this is unacceptable. We're going to have a conversation about this, but I also failed you by allowing you to turn it in 3 days late. So when that's not going to happen again, and we're going to make sure we meet the deadlines. And it's just holding people feet to the fire. But also, being the leader, you're going to hear a lot of people squawking behind your back about everything that you do and decisions that you make, but can't take it personal. That's part of the position.
That is. And, but the thing, so I know research doesn't necessarily back venting, but I will say having somebody that you can confide in, right? That's outside of your work environment that you can talk to, somebody that knows you well, right? That I feel like is so important. And it's a vital part of your mental health when you're in leadership because leadership is lonely and it's thankless and you've got to be strong inside and you have to know who you are. And every time you take on a new leadership position, you will have to adjust. You will have to grow. You'll have to learn. You'll have to learn the people. Every time you get a new employee, you're going to have to learn. The dynamics are going to change. You're going to have to adjust that way too. And so you're constantly growing, learning, adapting, and you need to be grateful for it, right? Because without change, you're not going to grow. So
Not at all.
yeah, you gotta, you need it. And that's why like I thrive in chaos. I love it because that's the best. I'm growing, I'm learning, I got new people. So I would just say that. I would just say that you have to just embrace it. And I think that's the toughest part is you are who you are, but you have to be resided in yourself. One of the things that we work on is a leadership map on what you're going to present and what you're going to project and who you're going to be and who you want to be and be that person as much as you can. And when you're not that person, reflect, forgive yourself for anything that you missed, set yourself up for the future when this happens again. What am I going to say? How am I going to handle it? Right? Have that, close your mind, close your eyes, and have that vision of yourself right? Doing the right thing. It's kind of like you said, right? You pretty much visualize all your episodes before they happen,
Yeah.
and you know how it's going to go. And that's really the only way I think that you can get through being a leader and you can be successful at it. Because for all the positive that I put in the world, right? There's a ton of negative that comes with it. But if you let that negative weigh you down, then you're not going to make a positive impact. So then what's the point of leading? You might as well just stay an employee.
Yeah, you might as well just stay part of the herd, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's the big thing, right? When it comes to leaders, and you have to be able to. I say it right, and I've said it already. If you have a team of 50, right? If you have a team of 100, you have to learn that you're dealing with 100 different individuals, 100 different personalities, right? And now you're going to have to know that hey, so and so don't work well with so and so thrives off of talking behind my back with so I can't match them up, and I can't match this group up. But as a leader, right, you have to realize that, you have to know that. And again, it's all goes back to knowing your team, right? Knowing your team. And that's the great thing with you, right? Of you've done so well with the team that you've had, and had in place because you got to know your team. And it's all about, having those conversations because sometimes some leaders don't want to be even bothered, right? Well, if it's not a, crazy issue that's going on or something pressing, I don't want to be, you're not on my calendar. I don't want to see you, and it's like, that can be frustrating, right?
Yeah. And I think that I would just say anybody that wants to step into leadership, that you have to genuinely care about people.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
if you don't genuinely have this passion to care about people and see them thrive and see them grow, and you want to see them succeed, then leadership's probably not for you.
Yeah. And a lot of people equate leadership with what? Money.
Money.
Exactly. And if you're doing it for a paycheck, you're not a leader. And I say that from the bottom of my heart. If you're in a role of leadership for the money, you're not a leader. Again, it's investing. And the investment becomes, like you said, Doc, is investing in the people, investing in your team, investing in yourself. I think a lot of it gets lost with people when they think, I made it to the top, right? I'm the leader. I'm the boss now. And so many people get stuck in the old habit of, I'm the boss. We're doing it my way or the highway, right? And I think the big thing I'm getting from you, Doc, is the genuine, conversations you have with your team, the genuine conversations you have internally with yourself, right? You're able to adapt, right? But you're not a chameleon. You're not a chameleon that changes from this person to that person, like some leaders do. They'll become this type of person when they're around this group or this type of person, right? And for you, there's no chameleon. There's no changing colors. There's no changing who you are. You are who you are. You're a leader. You're going to show the team, right, whether right, wrong, or indifferent. I got your back. But you're also going to lead by example, and that's the big thing. So I got one last question for you. You ready?
Okay, ready.
So this is for the person who feels invisible, right? I want you to speak directly to that person listening, right, who feels overlooked, exhausted, and unseen. I want you to give them one message of hope.
The first thing is that you matter. You have a purpose, and everything that you do is important. And I need you to appreciate you first, right? See that. Take a moment. Appreciate the challenges that you've been through. Look at where you've come from because you are so valuable and you have something that you need to share with the world. You have gifts and talents that you were born with, and you were born to make a difference. You're born to be connected to other people, right? So don't stay isolated. Don't let other people dim your light. Shine that light as bright as you can. And so right now you're probably feeling like somebody's smothering it. The weight of the world's on your shoulders. You feel frustrated. You feel like you don't want to go in the next day. But what I need you to do is to start making some small changes inside of you. Because when you start believing in yourself, when you start walking in a little taller, when you start dressing in a way that makes you feel confident and secure, people are going to notice. And I also need you to take that step and be courageous and move to the next level. Don't allow people to mistreat you in the situation that you're in, whether it be at work or it be at home, right? Stick up for yourself. You are your own best advocate. And if you need help, there are so many people that are around you that will do that, that will help you, that will be on your journey with you. You just need to reach out. And it's a lot of times, it's even programs that are free in your workplace. So you can do this. You've been through challenges before. This is nothing new, but the first step to progress is you appreciating you taking that gratitude, you loving yourself, you determining that this is going to be a good day for me today. And I'm going to find a new opportunity. I'm going to be in a place where people appreciate me. I'm going to be in a place where people see me, where they hear my thoughts and my ideas and my opinions, where they value me. And my talents are going to shine and I'm going to grow. And if you will take that with you and take that on, you will be successful. But you've got to get out of the familiarity and you've got to get out of your comfort zone. Because that's the only way you're going to get past invisibility and frustration.
Yeah, and the big thing there is, right, getting comfortable in the uncomfortable.
Yes.
It's a tough thing to do, but it does happen. So before I let everybody go today, right, I want to talk to you, the person listening. Maybe you've been nodding this whole episode. Maybe something Melissa said cracked something open in you that you've been keeping locked for a long time. Maybe you heard the word boundary and your stomach dropped because you don't know what it even feels like to have one, which is what I was a year ago. I want you to hear me on this. You are not broken. The fact that you give everything you have to the people around you, that you show up, that you care, that you carry it all, that is not a weakness. That is a gift. But gift given with no limits become a burden. And you were never meant to be a burden carrier. You were meant to be a leader. Dr. Melissa Jenner didn't write this book for people who haven't figured out. She wrote it for the ones still in the middle of the fight, the ones who are tired of being the last person in the room to advocate for themselves. And she wrote it because she was that person too. You don't have to shout to be heard. You don't have to shrink to be liked. You don't have to choose between being kind and being strong. Melissa, from the bottom of my heart and on behalf of the entire Uncle Jimmy family, thank you. Thank you for your service to this country. Thank you for your years of quiet leadership in rooms where not enough people like you get a seat. And thank you for finally saying what so many people needed to hear. The world doesn't need more noise. It needs more people with the courage to lead from exactly who they are. And to the listeners, right, I want you to go find Melissa. And this is my call to action right now. Family, here's what I need you to do right now. Not tomorrow, right now. Grab the book. Search Everyday Leadership for People-Pleasing Introverts by Dr. Melissa Jenner on Amazon. Get the paperback, get the Kindle, get it for someone you love who needs it. This is a book you'll keep coming back to. You can go visit our website, head to peoplepleasingintroverts.com. That's our home base. She's got free resources, articles, and tools specifically built for you. You can connect with her on LinkedIn. Look up Melissa Jenner, PhD on LinkedIn. Follow her work. She posts real, practical insights that will show up in your feed and remind you of what you're worth. Share this episode if this conversation hit home. Share it. Text it to your friend who's always overworked and underappreciated. Post it to your story. Tag someone who needs to hear it. That's how we change lives, one conversation at a time. If you got something real from this episode, leave us a 5-star review. It costs you nothing, and it means everything. It's how we bring more guests like Dr. Melissa Jenner to this show and more truth to your ears. And again, I just want to thank you, Melissa, from the bottom of my heart for coming on, and I appreciate everything that you're doing, and I look forward to our friendship.
It's really my pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you so much, and until next time, everybody, stay grounded, stay grateful, and remember, your quiet voice matters more than you know. This is Uncle Jimmy, and God bless you, and God bless this great country of ours.